Two queens, two legends, one the symbol of divine beauty, the other a political mastermind who defied an empire. Nefertiti and Cleopatra, two of the most powerful women in history, ruled Egypt in vastly different eras. Their lives were filled with intrigue, power, and, most of all, controversy. But which queen left the greater legacy? Was it Nefertiti, the mysterious queen who vanished from history, or Cleopatra, the last pharaoh who challenged the might of Rome? Stay with us as we explore their lives, their power, and the enduring question, who truly deserves to be remembered as the ultimate queen of Egypt? Cleopatra's rise from a young princess to the queen of Egypt was a journey filled with danger, ambition, and strategic brilliance. Her ability to navigate the treacherous waters of both Egyptian and Roman politics made her one of the most powerful women in history. But even as she reclaimed her throne and restored Egypt's glory, the shadow of Rome loomed ever larger. Cleopatra's story is one of triumph and tragedy, a tale of a queen who fought against all odds to secure her place in history. In the wake of Caesar's death, Rome was divided between those who supported his legacy and those who sought to destroy it. One of Caesar's closest allies, Mark Antony, was a natural choice for Cleopatra. Their meeting in 41 BC sparked not only a political alliance, but also a love affair that would become one of the most famous in history. Together, Cleopatra and Antony formed a powerful coalition, but their relationship also drew the ire of Octavian, Caesar's adopted son, who saw Antony as a threat to his own ambitions. Tensions between Antony and Octavian escalated, setting the stage for a final confrontation that would determine not just Cleopatra's fate, but the fate of the entire ancient world. Just as Cleopatra's power seemed to be solidified, tragedy struck. In 44 BC, Julius Caesar was assassinated by a group of Roman senators who feared his growing power. Cleopatra, who was in Rome at the time, suddenly found herself vulnerable. With Caesar gone, she had lost her most powerful ally, and her position was now precarious. Cleopatra returned to Egypt with Caesarion, now more determined than ever to secure her kingdom's future. But the world of Roman politics was in chaos, and Cleopatra knew that she would need to form new alliances if she was to survive. She set her sights on another powerful Roman, Mark Antony. With Ptolemy III gone, Cleopatra returned to the throne, this time sharing it with her younger brother, Ptolemy IV. Though it was clear that Cleopatra was the one in control, her alliance with Caesar had secured her power, but it also meant that Egypt's fate was now more entwined with Rome than ever before. In 47 BC, Cleopatra gave birth to a son, Ptolemy XV, better known as Caesarion. Cleopatra claimed that Caesar was the father, a declaration that had significant political implications. Caesarion represented the potential for a future where Egypt and Rome might be united under one ruler, Cleopatra's son. But while Cleopatra's position seemed secure for the moment, the world around her was still shifting, and Caesar's enemies in Rome were already plotting against him. With Caesar's backing, Cleopatra returned to Alexandria to face her brother, Ptolemy III, in a civil war. The conflict that followed, known as the Siege of Alexandria, was a brutal and bloody affair. Cleopatra's forces, aided by Caesar's Roman legions, clashed with her brother's army in a battle that would determine the fate of Egypt. For months, Alexandria was engulfed in chaos. Every day, Cleopatra's future hung in the balance. If her brother's forces won, it would mean not only her death, but the end of her line. But Cleopatra was no stranger to high-stakes political warfare. She knew when to strike and when to wait, calculating each move carefully. Finally, after a fierce naval battle on the Nile, Ptolemy III's forces were crushed. In a desperate attempt to flee, Ptolemy XIV drowned in the river, leaving Cleopatra as the undisputed ruler of Egypt. She had regained her throne, but her victory came at a price. She was now deeply tied to Rome, and more specifically, to Caesar. In 48 BC, Julius Caesar, one of the most formidable military commanders and political figures in Roman history, arrived in Alexandria. Caesar was in pursuit of Pompey, his rival in a Roman civil war, but when he arrived, he found the city in turmoil. Cleopatra saw her chance. If she could align herself with Caesar, she could reclaim her throne. But how could an exiled queen even get close to such a powerful man? This is where Cleopatra's ingenuity truly shined. According to legend, she had herself smuggled into Caesar's quarters, rolled up in a carpet, which was unrolled at his feet. When she emerged, Cleopatra captivated Caesar, not just with with her beauty, but with her intellect and charm. Cleopatra was no ordinary woman. She understood the delicate balance of power and knew exactly how to play the game. Caesar, intrigued and impressed, agreed to support Cleopatra in her quest to regain her throne. But their relationship was not just political, it also became personal. Their legendary affair would soon become the talk of the ancient world. When her father, Ptolemy II, died in 51 BC, Cleopatra was thrust into a complex and dangerous political game. According to her father's will, Cleopatra was to co-rule with her younger brother, Ptolemy III, who was just 10 years old at the time. In line with Ptolemaic custom, Cleopatra and Ptolemy XIII were to marry and rule jointly, but in reality, Cleopatra had no intention of sharing power. At just 18, she was already showing signs of her fierce ambition and political savvy. She sought to rule Egypt alone. However, Ptolemy III's advisors, particularly the influential eunuch Pothanos, had other plans. They sought to control Egypt through the young king, and Cleopatra's growing independence and influence became a threat. Before long, tensions between Cleopatra and her brother's camp escalated into open conflict. Cleopatra found herself increasingly isolated in Alexandria, where her enemies moved to oust her from power entirely. By the time Cleopatra was officially deposed in 48 BC, she had no choice but to flee. Exiled from her own kingdom, Cleopatra sought refuge in the desert, but she didn't give up. Instead, she began gathering an army, biding her time for the perfect opportunity to strike back. Little did she know, that opportunity would come in the form of one of the most powerful men in the world, Julius Caesar. Cleopatra was born into the Ptolemaic dynasty, a family of Greek origin that had ruled Egypt for nearly 300 years since the time of Alexander the Great. But by the time Cleopatra entered the world in 69 BC, the glory days of the Ptolemaic Empire were long gone. Egypt, once a dominant power, had grown weak and fractured, both economically and politically. Rome had already begun its rise as a global superpower, and Egypt was becoming increasingly reliant on Roman support to survive. Cleopatra's early life was far from peaceful. Her father, Ptolemy II, also known as Auletes or the flute player, was a king more interested in music than ruling, and his reign was marked by corruption, heavy taxation, and unrest. In fact, his rule was so unpopular that he was briefly forced into exile when Cleopatra was just a young girl. During this time, Cleopatra's family life became a battleground of political survival, where alliances shifted daily and no one could be trusted, not even family. Amidst this chaos, Cleopatra was preparing herself for the future. Unlike many royal women of the time, Cleopatra wasn't content to simply watch from the sidelines. She was highly educated, fluent in several languages, including Egyptian, which most Ptolemaic rulers didn't even bother to learn. She studied politics, philosophy, and the workings of both Egyptian and Roman systems of governance. Even as a child, Cleopatra knew that power wouldn't be handed to her. She would have to fight for it. Egypt, once a beacon of power, wealth, and grandeur, is now on the edge of collapse. Internal strife threatens the very heart of the empire, and Rome, a superpower on the rise, is watching, ready to claim control. In the midst of this turmoil is a young princess barely out of childhood, born into a family that is tearing itself apart. Her name, Cleopatra. But this is no ordinary story of royalty. Betrayed by her own blood, exiled from her kingdom, Cleopatra faces a choice that will define her legacy. Will she fade into history as another forgotten heir to a broken dynasty, or will she rise against the odds and claim her place as the last great queen of Egypt? This is a tale of ambition, cunning, and relentless determination. But beware, every step she takes is fraught with danger, and the question remains, how far will Cleopatra go to seize the throne?